So by now you've heard the news that yesterday Bernie Sanders suggested that if you're not voting for Joe Biden, you're being irresponsible. That if you were part of the Bernie Sanders movement and you're planning to do anything except vote for Joe Biden against Donald Trump, you are being irresponsible. I disagree with Bernie. I don't often disagree with Bernie, but I do here, because even as I acknowledge and even as I respect the view that electing Joe Biden as harm reduction is better than letting Donald Trump win, I 100% disagree with the move to shame and bully and ridicule or mock or name call anybody who isn't currently planning to vote for Biden. If you can't vote for Biden because of Tara Reade, or if you can't vote for Biden because he's far too conservative, if you can't vote for him because he doesn't back a Green New Deal or Medicare for all, I 100% understand and respect that decision, and you'll always be an ally of mine, just as those people voting for Biden out of harm reduction will still be welcomed as allies of mine as well. But the name calling and the ridicule's gotta go. Here's what Bernie himself actually said yesterday. Do we be as active as we can in electing Joe Biden and doing everything we can to move Joe and his campaign in a more progressive direction, or do we choose to sit it out and allow the most dangerous president in modern American history to get reelected? I believe that it's irresponsible for anyone to say, well, I disagree with Joe Biden and therefore I'm not going to be involved. That was Bernie there, and I fully understand the first half of that remark, that you can have a rational debate and come to the conclusion that it's better to get involved in this election and push Joe Biden from the left than sit it out and watch Donald Trump win. But to therefore automatically classify everyone that disagrees with that tactic as irresponsible is wholly, wholly inappropriate. And I actually think that this is really troubling to see from Bernie, because this totally clashes with what Bernie Sanders said during the previous primary cycle, where Bernie, of course, did a lot of work to help make Hillary Clinton president. He campaigned with her no fewer than 40 times. He did no fewer than 40 events for her. There were stretches of the campaign where Bernie was campaigning harder for Hillary than Hillary was for Hillary. Nonetheless, Bernie never ever in that campaign suggested you had to vote for Clinton, that it was your duty as part of the Bernie Sanders movement to move over to Hillary Clinton, that it would be quote unquote bad or irresponsible if you didn't vote for somebody that you didn't believe in. And if you don't believe me, there was a lengthy discussion Bernie had about this back in 2016, where he outlined how ultimately he's going to work for Hillary, but it's her responsibility at the end of the day to win over Bernie Sanders voters that aren't ready or aren't willing to vote for her at that particular stage in time. So let's look at this piece by Bernie Sanders again, and we can actually go through it key quote by key quote. So at first, you see Bernie Sanders make it absolutely crystal clear that we are not a movement where I can snap my fingers and say to you or anybody else what you should do, because you won't listen to me. You shouldn't. Bernie there, 100% on point. It is not up to me to decide where my movement goes. The movement is about more than me. The Bernie Sanders movement is not all about Bernie at the end of the day. It's about working class people. Again, not me, us. So Bernie can have his opinion, and Bernie can suggest that you take a certain move to say vote for Hillary Clinton or vote for Joe Biden or support this particular person in a down ballot race. But that's your choice at the end of the day. That is your choice as an individual, and that is the movement's choice collectively, irrespective of what Bernie Sanders suggests. Of course, Bernie's suggestions will be taken very seriously, and I think most Bernie Sanders supporters will likely follow his lead, but not everyone will, and that's one of the reasons this movement has real value, that it's not a quote-unquote cult, it's a movement of people that are fighting for a set of policies and philosophies, not one person winning one office. He goes on to say, I think if we end up losing, and I hope we do not, and if Secretary Clinton wins, it is incumbent upon her to tell millions of people who right now do not believe in establishment politics or establishment economics, who have serious misgivings about a candidate who has received millions of dollars from Wall Street and other special interests. And what he's basically saying there is that it's Hillary's responsibility. It's ultimately up to her to convince the Bernie folks that aren't ready yet. There's going to be Bernie folks that will go right into the vote blue no matter who camp as soon as Bernie Sanders was done. But that 20, 30, 40, however many percent of people that weren't ready to make that move, they have to be convinced. And it's not really Bernie's job. Bernie can do what he can. He can talk to his people. He can remind them what's at stake. He can suggest that on some issues, Hillary is close to Bernie and that is important. But fundamentally, it rests on the winning person's campaign to unify all the parts of the party. It's their responsibility. And if Clinton couldn't do it, that was on her and not upon Bernie. And importantly, not upon the voters that didn't feel that they could go to Hillary Clinton, that didn't feel Hillary Clinton made a sufficient case. And Bernie re-emphasizes that below when he says, so the point that I'm making is, it is incumbent upon Secretary Clinton to reach out not only to my supporters, but to all of the American people with an agenda that they believe will represent the interests of working families, lower income people, the middle class, those of us who are concerned about the environment, and not just big money interests. So again, when the chips are down, Bernie can do what he can to try to convince you to vote for Clinton or Biden, but it's your choice. Don't let anyone suggest to you that you are a bad person or that you are irresponsible when somebody runs a platform and it excludes you and your fundamental beliefs and principles. If they don't offer you that platform, that's fine in a sense because they're making a calculation. Not every platform can appeal to every person. So if they exclude you, that's a choice they're making, but then you have the rational and legitimate and respectable choice to say, actually, I can't vote for you. I certainly can't vote for Trump. I'm going to have to vote for somebody else or vote not at all at the presidential level. That's my choice here. Bernie nowadays is taking a much more pro-establishment position. And I have to say that I don't think it's effective and I don't think it matches the spirit of Bernie Sanders and his movement. If he feels that Joe Biden can convince people to come over, great. But he should be saying what he said in 2015, 2016. I will work hard for the nominee. I personally think that you should vote for the nominee. I think that it's a better choice than Donald Trump being president. I don't disagree necessarily with any of those viewpoints. But when you start making it about the irresponsibility of working class people that don't feel the Democratic Party represents them, instead of the fundamental failure of the Democratic Party to represent those working people, then I think you've really lost your way in a sense.